Everyone, we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn again, bringing you yet another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game-changing strategies, and of course, the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Joseph Martens, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. With us today is David Beabout. David is the Deputy Global CISO at NTT. There he is. Before that, he held other tech executive roles for companies including EY, Cloudera, and Deloitte. He also serves as a board member for several cyber and IT companies. And on a lighter note, he calls himself a neuromagic fanatic, and he's also a blacksmith. David, we've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the time and the opportunity, and I'm very much looking forward to what we get into today.
Awesome. So you've got so many different experiences. But first of all, a successful career in the technology area. Then I love the fact that you weave coaching and neuroscience into it. And we'll see how that bubbles up in our conversation about leadership.
Yeah.
When you look at your own journey, super accomplished journey in as a leader, what do you think are the reasons for your success? What do you think are the secret ingredients that got you to where you are?
That's a great question. And not one I reflect on often, to be honest with you. So I appreciate this time and the fact that we're gonna jump in here. I think that sort of illuminates something that is even part of my current evolution, really, which has been initially a lot of my career development was sort of what we would call horizontal development, right? Skills acquisition, right? Right. We want to be able to lean on and have a big toolbox and everything else. But if you don't have the vertical development, which is the latter part, and probably the last 5 to 10 years of your career, or of my career, excuse me, which has been, okay, well, I have all these tools, and is my view of the world, am I able to notice and pay attention to the things that allow me to be more effective with those tools? That's really where things have evolved more recently. I credit a lot of that with having gone through, again, a coach training program, but also in the work and seeing things through the eyes of other people. I think that's extremely important. So for me, it was really a lot more heads down at first, skill acquisition, horizontally developing a big toolbox and lots of tools in it. And then after that, really has been this real big shift. And it was actually during COVID. Went all in on that pivotal point in humanity. And started looking at the inner game and how I was observing the world and how that could be something that could be a significant game changer for me in both how I see opportunities and challenges. So that's the major shift in the transition that's taken place in yeah, probably the last 5-10 years.
And we talked before, and you mentioned that you have coaching certifications, you're deeply into coaching. It sounds like this was triggered by COVID, or was there an internal development for you as well? Was there something that you felt is needed in your toolkit, in your development, that got you to that? Talk about how you got into that world.
I think it was really me being willing to listen to my own curiosity, right? We get so narrowly focused sometimes on this is the track, I've seen others go down that, and I have to stay in that track. When in fact, this curiosity about humans and what they're all about and what they're up to, it's always been sort of fascinating. And then when I look back on my career, a lot of what I have done has had this element of the human in it. So what do I mean by this? So I graduated university, and then I ended up working in an insurance company for a while, ended up going into the military at 25, a little bit older than your normal person who goes in, but I ended up going in specifically because I wanted to work in the human intelligence field. And through all of that, learning a foreign language, going through this whole process and working with people in other countries, I started to get to see the world through other people's eyes. I had a mission, of course, and things that I needed to do, but it was sort of broadening this perspective in lots of different ways, which I thought, was kind of interesting and curious. And especially seeing, I think a foreign language really helped me through that language have conversations and see another person's reality through their language. So that was really opening for me in a lot of ways. And September 11th happened when I had first joined the military, and bad guy hunting was a thing I did for a while. So there was this human element of understanding what's going on there and what's driving, and like just this curiosity, really. And then I happened to be working in the Department of Defense at one point and saw a report about how a country used a cyber attack to launch a military campaign against another country. And it just completely blew my mind. And I'm thinking, you have got to be kidding me. Like, this is not like hoodies and Mountain Dew in a basement kind of thing. Like, this is a real battle space. This is a real thing. Really intrigued me. I got to see kind of behind the curtain, got to see what the bad actors were doing. I get really enamored by who are these people and what is this all about, right? So I really started digging in on that, and that's what launched my cybersecurity career probably about 15 years ago. And here we are again, 15 or so years into this career, leaning on those other experiences to kind of help along the way. And I've very fortunately found myself in a sort of an international context in the last 6, 7 years, which has really been fascinating in another part of the world. And so my point being here is through that story is this, I didn't realize it until I went through this coaching process, right? And it started to have my aperture open a little bit more that there has been this common thread. There has been this curiosity I've had, although they were very specifically focused on these different topics. This curiosity has been the thread. And when I leaned into that, we got to pause during COVID and I got to really reflect and say, all right, I'm leaning in on this. This is something that's always been there. I want to go all in and really being able to not only understand for myself, be able to apply that from a leadership perspective and helping those who are around me be bigger than the sum of the parts, right? That's really where I'm sort of at that inflection point now moving forward.
I think most listeners will have heard about the importance of coaching, but not gone anywhere near as deep as you have. So maybe say a few words about what you get from it, how you can use coaching, what some of the experiences is that you have with that, if you could.
Yeah, there's so much I could say in this area that I'm just so curious about still and fascinated with. I'll hit a couple of highlights, right? I think there was a point in this process for me. One of the organizations that I support is a nonprofit in the Washington, D.C. area around cybersecurity. And we really got engaged in these conversations for a while around neurodiversity and neurodivergence. So not, people who have very unique skill sets, but are, really deep dive in one area. And I'm thinking, I'm looking around and pretty much if you really start to look at everything, everybody's a little neurodivergent to some extent in some way. And I love that because it just opens up the flavor of what's possible, the new recipes that can kind of come together. And coaching really, at least the program that I had was this experiential first half of me being coached and seeing through the eyes of these new lenses through this new world, and then turning and applying that with people who were willing to sort of play with me in that environment and and explore really about the realm of the possible. And what I would say is probably the major shift that's come from that is rather than trying to show up and have an agenda to drive things very clearly without any latitude, I'm allowing more space for things to evolve and unfold, and allowing the natural gifts of what's around me to really shine in that context, because then we get to have this really interesting, nobody knows what it's going to be, but it's going to be awesome, and we're all oriented towards this new future goal. I just absolutely love that. So that's one thing, is really opening up that possibility for something new could evolve that we've never seen, and it's been a lot of fun. The other part of that really has been around what I would say is somatics. And somatics for me, and the way that I describe that, is the inner awareness. Okay. And I'll use an analogy here. One of the questions I have, if I were to ever write a book, one of the chapters might be called, okay, you can do a port scan, but can you scan your own body? Right? We tend to walk around thinking that our body is there to carry our brain from place to place. But in fact, our entire experience is a lived experience, as is our body and our mind and our whole humanity connected. And we talk about the neuromagic piece, which you mentioned at the beginning. I love applied neuroscience. in this space because we have as many neurons in our organs as we do in our brain. So when you have a gut feeling for something, it's actually wisdom your body holds, not just your brain, right? 95% of the communication, I think this is, the specifics are, maybe I'm a little off at this, but it's well over 90% of the communication is up, not down from the brain, between your body and the brain.
Okay.
So there's so much that's going on that your brain is taking in, that is communicating upward. There's a lot happening there. And when we really lean into that awareness, you really understand what's going on with you, you become a lot more aware of what is possible for other people, what they could be going through. So as a leader, I become much more attuned and open to, they could be having a different experience than what presents. Right? They could be having something going on there, and I can become curious about that. What's going on, right? I can really have some good, open conversations, and I can hold a space that allows that to evolve. I also have a personal perspective on this too, and the last thing I'll say here is, specifically with cybersecurity, we had this very interesting debate at one point at a dinner, and I haven't been able to shake it out of my head. We are acting like we're acting like an industry, not like a profession yet. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of these tendencies where we're still sort of young, new on the scene, we're evolving, we're doing the best we can with what we know. But when you look at other professions like finance, accounting, sales, marketing, right? Like all of these different functions in a business, they all use coaches. They all have, professional development that they lean into as part of what's going on there. And we don't see that as much. I think you know that too. We don't see that as much in the tech industry, right? So I really think that there's a lot that we have available to us that we're not leaning into. When you look at the best athletes in the world and the best at really anything in the world, they all have coaches all the way to the end of their career, right? So I really think that that's an extremely important thing that is an opportunity for us to lean into professionally as a collective. So.
That's an amazing observation. Yeah, that really never struck me, and you're absolutely right. There are people who do coaching just for salespeople, coaching just for marketing people, and there are not so many in the tech space. Yeah,
that's right.
Let me take another look at your evolution as a leader.
Sure.
When you think of your journey, what was something that surprised you? What was a situation where you felt like you had an idea going in, you had some preconceived notion of what it would be like, and then when you actually were there, it was different?
Oh, wow. I've had lots of those, I think. I really do have a fundamental belief that people are doing the best that they know how to do. And without getting into a lot of detail, I would say, and just staying at a very high level, just to be appropriate, I would say that I have always sort of prided myself in my early stages, the first third or half of my career, really prided myself in the ability to read people, sort of get a sense of what's going on there, not really having to inspect all that much, really having a good idea of 95% accuracy kind of thing going in. And I leaned on that a lot of times. And when I started having the conversation of, I think this is what reality is, at least this is what I think this person is going through, but when I stopped and said, let me just test it, let me just ask, hey, Stacy, right? This is what I'm seeing, and this is what I think is happening. Can you help me understand? Is this true? Because this is sort of what's being experienced. And the more every single time I've had that conversation, I have been fascinated by what unfolds from that conversation, because what I thought was really going on was never really reality for that person.
Yeah.
And the things you learn, the strength of the connection through that, the openness and communication, it's a wonderful and beautiful thing. So rather than going in assuming I know, I don't assume anymore. I just ask, right? And take the chance to have that conversation. So.
I like the way you framed that. Do an experiment, right? Testing something, testing how the other person sees it, or what's
We
going on
do it
for
all
them.
the time with everything else we do
Right.
professionally, right? We have
Yep.
evidence to the fact that what, this is true or not. Well, we should start treating each other with the same sort of, you know, respect or diligence, I would say, right? I think it could be
Right.
very helpful. But what opens up with all of that is um, the opportunity to build out and understand in new ways. And I think that just it creates an environment where, as a leader, the people who are, working with you on your team that you're co-creating this environment with, that's going to propagate out to the people that they
Yep.
work with.
Yep.
And I think when you can start to have an intentional focus that your organization, the team that you're responsible for and with, has that effect, and then it can cross the seams into other functions in the business, then you know that you're driving in the organization, you're not responding anymore.
Yep. Yeah, and like you said before, right, it opens the horizon of what is possible. That's one of the outcomes of that. Now, we talked about your past leadership journey. Let's take a look at today. And again, not a question about position, roles, projects, companies, or anything like that, about your leadership journey, David. When you look at where you are today, what do you think is an area that you want to focus on at the moment? What's an area where you feel this is where you could grow? This makes sense to get myself ready for the future. What is an area in your own leadership development that is at the top of your list?
For me, that's a couple of things. Number one, and this is the good fortune I have had in the last few years of working in a space where I'm interacting at an international perspective in a global sense. I'm really looking to lead into that partnering across borders of countries, right? Collectively, and we from a technology perspective, doesn't matter what industry you're in, we all have this interdependency at a global level. And where I'm focused now is really leaning into understanding more about that, helping shape the direction and the awareness that we are all interconnected, and starting to create opportunities for us to work collaboratively, because the threats abound in ways that we probably don't even fully understand. And I think about that, of course, a good cybersecurity professional, always questioning, doubting, and, always threat focused. There's a little bit of conditioning we all have in the cyberspace around that. But when you look at the risk management related to that, there is tremendous opportunity and ability to build bridges between these interconnected pieces that I think is really where I'm excited about leaning into. And I would say even beyond that is just the simple phrase of having a team that is going to be bigger than the sum of its parts. That is fascinating to me. This idea of being very intentional about creating a team and working with teams that are doing a lot more than they should on paper, I think that's amazing. And I also love this very question. I'm sort of sitting with this one right now, which is, what is it that this particular group of people and the skills that they bring, what is the collective thing that they could do that no other grouping of people in the world can ever do? And seeing what comes of that, I think that exploration is fascinating.
Wow.
And it really opens up a lot of very powerful discussion, I think, and awareness of what's possible, right? I think just allowing that to take place and creating an environment where people can lean into that, what an amazing set of conversations I have, I think.
That's a powerful question. I think I might copy that for future.
Well, I have to give credit.
Future use,
It's not
David.
my originating thought, but it was one that was part of a course that I had gone through.
Okay.
I really am just very fascinated to give all credit to them. So.
Yeah. I would like to ask you one last question. Maybe we can squeeze this into the time, and then we'll land the plane here, David. So maybe short answer. If you had a magic wand, and I know magic is part of you, but I picked it up there. If you had the magic wand and you could make one change about how many tech executives lead, when you look at your peers, when you look at what's happening in the tech space, and you could make a difference there with a magic wand, what would you do?
Oh, man. And I think this is possible. So I don't even know that it requires magic. I would like for all tech executives to not only be intimately aware of how they see themselves in the world, but how they are also experienced by the world. The overlay of those two things is just a fascinating place, and it takes some courage to lean into that, right? If you're open to magic, you got to be open to, whatever comes of that conversation. But man, I think that is truly magic in terms of the outcome.
Wow. Okay. David, thank you so much for the conversation. There were many, many different perspectives in there.
I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
To everyone else out there, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and most of all, come back again for our next episode of the Top Innovator Series. And until then, keep your brain cells active. And as we've learned today, wherever they are in your body, right? Take care, everyone.
That's right.